Gahuti Backcountry Trail, Fort Mountain State Park. Is it one of the hardest hiking trails in the state of Georgia? That's what we're here to find out. What's up, YouTube world? So back out here at it again. The last couple videos I've done doing gear reviews and walking around in the woods has really got me into the hiking fever. Last few years I still hiked, but I neglected it to pursue kayaking, and so I think this fall and winter and into the spring I'm gonna get back into the hiking routine. I miss it, and I miss coming out here into the woods, and so I have a goal in mind to hike specific trails that I've always wanted to do, I've just never pursued. And with that being said, this is going to be the first video in a series of 12 videos that are going to outline 12 different trails, and these trails are supposed to be the hardest or toughest hiking trails in the state of Georgia. And so it's gonna be a logistical nightmare with some of them. Some of the trails require you to be on the trail for multiple days, or at least an overnight. Some trails are just long enough that you could do it from point to point in one day, but you would need a shuttle car or a car parked. So it's gonna take me a little bit to figure out all the logistics for some of the trails. There is, however, a couple trails that I'll be able to do as a loop or out and backs. And so, as you can see behind me here today, I'm back up here at Fort Mountain. I'm at the trailhead for the Gahuti Backcountry Trail. This is also the parking lot for the Cool Springs Cool Springs Overlook that I took you to and showed you in the last video. And at the end of the last video, I stopped by the visitor center, also known as the trading post, and I picked up a map, which I have here in my pocket. I've studied it. This trail, the Gahuti, is only 8 miles, give or take, in length. I've read and heard that it's more like 10, but it is a loop hike, so I haven't decided if I want to go on the west loop that way or the east loop that way. I'm thinking I'm gonna start out on the east loop and go that way, so I'll actually be coming back from here. The couple that I talked to at the West End Overlook when I was here last time told me that they had hiked the Gahuti, and that either someone told them or they looked it up, and the Gahuti is considered one of the hardest trails in the state. That's not what I found in my research. So for the last week, I've been going down all these rabbit holes and reading all kinds of different articles and write-ups on these trails, which ones are considered the hardest, and which ones are not, which ones didn't make the list. Not a single article out of 10 articles or write-ups that I looked at or read all agreed on a specific list of trails to be the hardest. However, out of those 10 write-ups, there were some trails that were on each list multiple times, and so I basically made a hodgepodge list of these 10 different articles that I read, and I just made a list. Originally it was only going to be 5 trails, then it turned into 8 trails, and then I kept writing, and it turned into 12, and I probably could have made it more than 12, but I wanted to be realistic. And so the Gahuti was not on any of these lists of trails. So I decided to go ahead and add it to the list anyways because I know this area, Fort Mountain, just on the outskirts of the Cohuttas. The terrain here is relentless. The elevation profile isn't horrible, but one of the big factors that you have here are the bear encounters. Almost every review or every comment that I've seen on the All Trails app, someone seen or was close to a bear on every hike out here. And it is prime season for mamas to have cubs. Actually, the cubs are probably getting to a size now where they present a problem in themselves, being a little bigger and probably a little more aggressive, more curious. So I think that's probably one of the bigger concerns here. Also, I don't know what the water sources are like. Just looking here, I know there's a Big Rock Trail, which is on the outskirts of the lake, has some waterfalls and a tributary, so I know there's going to be water there. And Rock Creek, I can only assume that Rock Creek is named Rock Creek because of a creek, so I'm hoping that there will be water there, because I didn't bring a whole lot of water with me, and it is supposed to be in the 80s today. And so just a quick rundown. I didn't bring the list with me, but off the top of my head, on the list of trails that I'm going to be hiking for this series is the Gahuti for one, the Arcaqua eventually, the Duncan Ridge Trail, the Sittons Gulch Trail, Edmonds Backcountry Trail. One list had a trail in Cloudland Canyon. I believe it was referred to as the Waterfalls Trail. It may have another name, I'm not sure. Mount Yonah, Smith Creek Trail, I believe it was, over at Black Rock Mountain State Park. The Conasauga River Trail was on there on one list, and there's some other ones. One thing that most articles agreed on across all 10 articles or all 10 write-ups was that the Arcaqua Trail holds the #1 spot, and if not the #1 spot, then the #2 spot, followed by the Duncan Ridge Trail. Some of the write-ups had Duncan Ridge Trail in there as being the hardest hike above Arcaqua, and I think the reason for that would be that the Duncan Ridge Trail is probably 3 times, maybe 2 times to 3 times longer, so it's a multiple day trip, and there's something like 17 or 18,000 feet elevation gain across the whole span of the trip. That is the common denominator that I'm seeing with this list of trails, is the hardness or the toughness of the trail is rated mostly by elevation gain. Most of all the write-ups I read talked more about elevation gain than terrain, and in my opinion, terrain is a big factor. So in my mind right now, the Arcaqua is probably #1. That goes without saying that I have been in the area in the mountains of the Duncan Ridge Trail, and it is some pretty tough terrain, but I don't think you're going to be doing no rock climbing or boulder hopping like what you do on the Arcaqua. So with that being said, we're gonna get to this. I'm already getting a late start. I stayed over on my workout this morning and did some other things before I left the house. But so as I mentioned, this is the Gahuti Mountain Trail at Fort Mountain State Park. You can day hike this like what I'm gonna do. However, if you want to camp overnight, permits are required, and you can get them. You can either get them at the visitor center, but when I visited the visitor center on the last video, she gave me a piece of paper and told me to reserve a spot on GeorgiaStateParks.com or something like that, .org, something like that. Anyways, you go on and reserve a spot just like you would a campsite here. I think it's, you gotta pay a little bit of money, $10 or something. I didn't look into it that far because I don't plan on camping. Again, this trail specifically is 8 miles according to the kiosk here. However, online comments and the couple that I spoke to in the last video said that it was more like 10 when they tracked it. So I am going to be tracking it on my watch today to see the total elevation gain and to see the total miles traveled. So here's my loadout for today. This is the assault pack that I showed on the last video. I'm still not ready to do a pack review yet. Some of the items that I've ordered or that I'm waiting on has been delayed for shipping, so I still don't have all the gear in it that I want to be in it. And I also, for the purposes of the day hikes, took some of the gear out. I still have the gear in there that would be necessary if I end up having to spend the night on the trail for whatever reason. I can do it comfortably, but you know, the camp chair and the pad and the underquilt for the hammock, I took all that out. It's just unnecessary weight for a day trip, and so this should be a good test for this pack. A solid 8 miles of up and down terrain, and you know, I'm sure at some point there's going to be some walking over boulders and roots and stuff, and so it should be a good test to see how it's going to ride, how it's going to do. And then again, the other big issue is the bears. I've had many encounters with bears over my years of hiking in the North Georgia mountains, and I have been around mama bears with cubs. I didn't bring any form of protection with me today. No gun, no bear spray. Bear spray is on my list of things to get. Don't have it today, so I think the most nerve-wracking thing at the moment is dealing with any potential bear encounters. But generally speaking, black bears don't attack here in the southeast. Not saying that they won't, but generally speaking, they don't. The mauling reports and attack reports here are generally pretty low. You get some up in the Smoky Mountains where the bears are protected, but mostly out here in the wild, they're as scared of you as you are of them. And I'm also a believer that if you continue to think about something, then you'll think it into existence, or you'll speak it into existence. So the best thing for me is to just kind of put that in the back of my mind, not forget about it totally, but put it in the back of my mind, so that I can still enjoy the hike and not be completely worried the whole time that a bear is gonna run up on me out of nowhere. And so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this hoodie off. It's starting to warm up already, and load the pack up on the back, and we're gonna head out. We're gonna start on the east loop going that way, and it looks like we've got 1.5 miles to Hogpen is our first like little destination. Looks like there's a camp area there, so let's get it. And we're off. It is 9:40, so let's see how long this takes. The trails look like this. Basically the whole half mile that I've hiked already. It's very well marked, and by the looks of this trail you would think that it's well traveled. I don't know how well traveled it is. I think maybe the Park Service does a good job of keeping it maintained though. So I think that's why it looks the way it does. There was some spots back around the little hill over there that I came through that were not overgrown, but they definitely didn't look like this. It reminded me, that spot over there reminded me more of a hiking trail, what a backcountry trail should be designated as. But so far so good. I've only climbed a little bit. For the most part, I've been going down, so I'm thinking that we're gonna go all the way down to the lake, and then on the back side of Fort Mountain, when we climb back up to the tower, is gonna be where things might get a little rough. Could be wrong, but that's what I'm just stopped here. I'm just kind of taking in the woods that's around me and looking for different signs of animals or what have you. I don't know how well you can see it, but right in that area is a down tree that's shredded up pretty good, where it looks like bears have been digging for grubs. And then a little ways back down the trail, there was a spot in the bank where you could see they'd been digging the rocks out and stuff. And also check out this cocoon or spider web. I think it's a cocoon, but I can't be 100%. I know tunnel weavers or tunnel web spiders will create nests like this, but also a lot of those are cocoons waiting for butterflies to come out. Anyways, I just mentioned that we haven't been going up, and for the last little segment here, we've been going pretty much straight up, which is okay. Get the legs fired up already, and we have made it 0.6 miles, so just over half a mile. We've got another full mile before we reach the first camp area that I think was called Hog Pen. So as you see, I've reached the 1 mile mark, and it's a little off from my watch, which my watch, I mean, it's a Garmin, it's GPS, so it could easily be off. I don't know how they calculated the distances here, so there's probably definitely some discrepancies in mileages, but that's okay. The last little bit of the trail, I've been hiking in this thick shit, and this, from my experiences, hiking in these thick rhododendrons is where you're gonna run into bee nests, bears, you'll have snakes I've seen hanging from the branches before. And thankfully so far, I haven't had any of that. But I was looking at the map, and just up the hill here, not very far, probably 500-600 yards maybe through the woods, is the main road for the park. So not saying that they can't or won't be here, but with the road being that close, they've probably run down into the valley. And plus, it's, you know, it's warmed up pretty good already, probably 75-80 degrees. So they're probably sleeping or something for the day. Never know though, so just gotta keep your eyes open. Hey, bear. Hey, bear. Not sure, but had some crashing noises up there above the hill. I don't know if a tree fell or if a bear was up there and took off up the hill. Didn't run down the hill towards me, but it wasn't very far up that hill, probably 40 or 50 yards. So just to kind of mitigate them coming any closer, yell out a couple times. Hopefully it'll deter them away. I don't know, maybe it was a tree falling because I haven't heard any other movement up there, and the wind is blowing a little this morning, but the problem with hiking in the late summer or early fall before the foliage falls off is it's just so thick you can't really see anything. So even if there was a bear up there, I don't know if I could see it with the way everything's so green right now. So there is a water source on this first mile stretch or mile and a half stretch of the East Loop. So that's a good thing to know. I haven't even drank any of my water yet. So no need to stop and filter water yet, but as the day gets hotter, I'll be trying to hydrate more, and I'll probably be stopping at the next couple water sources and trying to down some water. According to the watch, it's been 1.3 miles. So if my watch, by what my watch said earlier and by what the mile marker said on the tree back there, I should be rolling up on the campsite soon. It seemed like my watch was about 0.2 miles off of what they had marked. So I'll be looking to roll up on that or walk up on that here in a little bit. So stay tuned. I just needed to walk on around the bend because I'm literally at the campsite. So they have a big bear box here, which is really nice. You can put your food in and the bears can't get to it. Seems like a really nice campsite. I'm not sure what the non-authorized trail means, but looks like probably where the Park Service comes in because there is a bundle of firewood here. I can't imagine someone would have carried that in. However, there is a water source here, so that's nice. You've got a little bit of running water, so enough to make enough to work the filter easier than if it was just flat still water, and then also so it's not stagnant. But looks like this has been used quite a bit. So they've got a standard fire ring, but they also have an old fire pit and a newer fire pit. So I'm not sure what all that's about. Usually they try to stop you from having those fire rings if they supply you with a fire grate. But a big plus for this area is them having these hiking boxes or these bear boxes out here. I think the lady told me that all of them but one have a bear box, and I'm assuming it's probably the most remote one. Probably don't have a solid way for the rangers to get in here and put one. So she said, she told me, you know, unless you're comfortable hanging your food, then keep that in mind if you're gonna do it. Excuse me, if you're gonna do an overnight or so. There's that, and we're back on the trail already. So that's gonna mark 1.5 miles down. That means we've got roughly 6.5 more miles to go. And I did take a picture of the kiosk earlier to see how far the next campsite was, but I'll have to look back at the picture, so I'll do that in a little bit, and then I'll get back with y'all and let y'all know how far I'm looking before I get to the next camp area. Back there at the camp, I told you that I would look to see what the mileages was to the next campsite, and it was 3.1 is what the mile mark was. So at 2.7 you cross your first road, and I'm right at the road right here about to cross. And something else that I forgot to mention earlier, when I was studying the map, there's several places where cross roads, or you come to another trail that would be relatively easy to bail off if you needed to. So I always keep that in mind when I'm hiking, just so if I do have to bail off for any reason I can. But we're about to cross the road right here, mile 2.7. It's at the very front of Fort Mountain State Park, where you come in. I can actually see Highway 52 right over there and the big signs. And then once I cross the road, it'll be another half mile or so to the next campsite. When I get to that campsite, I'm probably going to stop for 45 minutes to an hour, eat lunch, hydrate, get some more filtered water if there's a water source, and then probably hang in my hammock for a little bit, and then head on and try to finish the trail. That'll be not quite halfway, but pretty close. So here we go. You can see right up there, stop sign, front entrance to the park. I mean, very front. There's the gates. There's the sign, open 7 a.m., closed 10 p.m., no turnaround available after 10 p.m. So, I believe the trail goes down right over here. I actually remember looking at this trail on the way in this morning. I didn't notice it in the last video, but I noticed it this morning on the way in. So, got another half mile, and I'll get back with you guys when I make it to the next campsite. So it looks like we're gonna get rewarded
with a nice little view here. And I was wondering if there was going to be any, and it appears that there absolutely is. This looks like part of that other trail maybe. If it wasn't right in the direct sun, I'd sit here and eat lunch. Anyways, pushing time here. Got about 10 minutes before I want to stop for lunch, so we're gonna move on a little bit from here and find us a place to eat. All right, so we're walking into second camp here. This is number 2, considered. The name of it is Gold Mine Camp. It's actually like 0.1 miles off the main trail. You get a hike down in here, and unfortunately I do not think there's going to be a water source here, which is fine. I'll go ahead and eat and drink what I have, and then I'll have to most definitely stop on down the hill or on down at the next water source and get water. Really nice camp area, same thing as the last one. Fire ring, rock circles, they've put stumps out. As you've seen back there, past the bear box, a lot of nice trees to hang a hammock in right in here. It looks like a lot of people have camped. So yeah, we're gonna I'm gonna set my hammock up, grab lunch, and I'll get back with you guys in a little bit. Alright, so I took a 1-hour break for lunch. Took about 20 minutes, ate my lunch, drank the rest of my water. Then for like 10 or so minutes, I was looking at the map, trying to figure out what I've got coming in front of me for the rest of the day. I read for about 20 minutes, and then I took a little 10-15 minute nap, and just happened to wake up at 1 o'clock, but I feel re-energized. I feel pretty good, so we're gonna get back on the trail. I've got to stop somewhere on further down the next time I find water, and filter some water from my bottle. Completely out now. I'm not dehydrated yet, but I don't want to get dehydrated either, so I'm just gonna make it a priority to stop at the next water source. Come on. I don't know how well you can see it, but not even 50 yards, maybe more like 30, is the paved road. I actually turned around on that road last week when I drove up here in my truck to hike the Tower Trail, but this is the cottages. So here's a good example of what they mean by, quote, backcountry trail. So I'm making pretty good time. Come down to another road crossing here. I don't think this is a road crossing. Yeah, maybe. I think I seen this the other day. I can't be for sure though. Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter. But I'm up to 4.5 miles now, so I'm well over the halfway mark. I've gained a mile and some distance since lunch, and it's only been 15 minutes. So if that gives you any idea of what the hiking is like through that section, right there, bear scat right off the road. So this is another grown-up area, another place to keep my eyes open. like one of the first places I've seen where there's a good boulder jumble like this. But I'm also seeing something right over there to the left that I don't like the looks of. Looks like a bunch of yellow jackets flying. So I'm gonna walk through here pretty quickly because I don't really feel like getting stung today. Now that we made it past that, anyways, I highly anticipate that it's gonna be a pretty good climb up to that ridge, and then it looks like it's a pretty good ridge walk all the way up to campsite 4, and then I think from the last little bit, so I think it's like maybe half a mile, 0.4 miles or something like that. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 0.6 miles from campsite 4 up to the parking area where the trail will circle back around to Cool Springs. Looks like a pretty good climb. Campsite number 3. There's a bear box here, so it's got to be campsite 4. The lady told me they don't have a box at. But I'm just gonna walk up here to check it out just to see. Obviously no water source at this one either. And I have passed 2 water sources, but both water sources looked pretty nasty, and I'm not in a dire situation at the moment, so if I can, I will wait until I get cleaner water. Okay, so not a bad looking camp area. Same as before. They've got the grate in there for you. Now, one thing I noticed different about this one is they don't have another fire ring, so they've managed to keep it pretty clean. I also don't really see, okay, I guess you could use these 2 trees and maybe those 2 trees over there for hammock hanging, or if you've got long enough straps, you could use the big tree and the little tree. But not a bad camp area. I would probably camp here just as a quick hike in, overnight hike out. The breeze feels good here. All right, so here we are. Can't ask for anything much better than that. I'm glad that there's a couple of views on here because I was starting to get a little bit worried. So out of everything that I've hiked so far today, and now exactly 6 miles, this is probably the most refreshing sight to see out of the whole trail. The vista points, they're cool, but this right here is a welcome sight. So I mentioned a while ago that I hadn't found any sorry, something very strange up there. Wow. So I mentioned a while ago that I hadn't found any water sources I was comfortable getting water out of. Most of them are either dry or whatever other reasons. Just probably a quarter mile back, I found a very small trickle that I was comfortable getting water out of. I drank 3 bottles of water sitting there and filtered an extra one to bring with me. And then I walk a quarter mile and find this, and super refreshing, especially for somebody who you know, if you're out here and you need to replenish your water, this is a very good place to do it. It's probably not going to find water flow anywhere else like this, and it's this is actually probably pretty low considering we need rain here in Georgia bad. So I've got 2 miles to make it back to the car, and I believe this is where my ascending is gonna start. I can see across the waterfall right there. It's just going straight up that mountain already, and this is still on the, I'm actually on the Big Rock Loop trail, the Gahuti and the Big Rock share this trail. Correction, I just showed you a minute ago the trail that goes up over there that I completely thought was the trail. It is not. There's a blaze for the Gahuti Big Rock Trail right there. It goes on up around, skirts the side of the creek here. I couldn't see the blazes around this rock from down below, so we are not actually going straight up that mountain. All right, cool. Things are starting to get interesting over here on this side. This is probably some of the hardest scrambling or hiking that I've seen all day. Good little boulder garden here, but nothing that's not easily doable. Just make sure of your footing as you're walking, and keep a lookout for snakes around the rocks. You'll see them sunning a lot. Other than that, piece of cake. We are 7.3 miles, probably more like 7.1, because I actually took a wrong turn and I ended up hiking the outside loop of the Camper's Loop Trail. So I think that added like 0.1 or 0.2 miles. Either way, just under a mile left. I could see Fort Mountain just a while ago from a view. So we're getting pretty close. Campsite number 4. Over there through the woods. So this little pig trail, you can't even tell it's a trail, goes off down, crosses the creek and goes over there. There is not a bear box, but there is a giant fire pit over there. I'm not gonna take the time to walk over there, but just a little while back on a tree there was a marker that said mile 7. My watch said 7.7. So somewhere along the line, somehow my watch got way ahead when earlier it was behind. Maybe it's because of that extra loop that I done, but I could have swore that loop was only like 1.1 or 1.2 or 0.1 or 0.2 miles. Anyways, we're getting closer now. Probably half hour we'll be done. We are steadily gaining elevation, so I think this is the final push up to the top of Fort Mountain. It stayed cool most of the day, all the way up until after lunch, but now later this evening, 3:30, 3:45 now, it's hot. I'm just pouring sweat. All right then. All right, so I just came out of the woods there, crosses here, and way down there you can see the sign for Cool Springs parking. That's right where my car is. I was gonna walk the road, but is that really completing the trail if I miss this corner? I don't think it is, so I'm gonna walk this corner. It'll bring me down to the Cool Springs overlook and then right up to the trail kiosk. So let's do it. Almost there. See the old RAV4. Not a single other person here still. Alright, I'm gonna walk to the exact place I started earlier to make it official. And there you have it. Officially, Gahuti Trail complete. Stay tuned. Where to start? Okay, so first off, the pack did excellent. Rode on the hips really well, didn't chafe me anywhere, and all the pockets actually worked out really well, so I was able to organize gear where I could just reach in and grab and I wouldn't have to dig through the main compartment of the pack. That worked really well. Second bullet point, I'm not sure what the state needs to qualify a trail to be considered a backcountry trail. In my opinion, the trail that I hiked today was not a backcountry trail. There were plenty of public access points. It was not very remote. And a number of other things, but you know, I explained most of the stuff in the video. There would be times where you could look off the side of the trail and there would be a house, you know, or a cabin, or a cottage, like 40 yards off the trail. So I was very disappointed early on with the hike. You know, I started going this way, so east, and very easy hiking all the way to mile 4.5, which is over half of the trail, right? So it reminded me a lot of hiking on the AT. The trail's real wide, it's very well maintained, almost too maintained, to a point that it's you know, 10 feet wide and just completely down to the dirt, roots and rocks. You know, that's all well and fine, but that's also another factor for me where I don't think, you know, a backcountry trail to me is tight, narrow, remote. So there's just several factors that I don't think this trail should be considered a backcountry trail. Around mile 4 to 4.5 is on the very southwest corner of the park, down around the lake, and in that area it did become more treacherous. I don't know. More. The hiking became harder. Larger boulders that you had to scramble over in some spots, really dug out roots, especially around some of the creek areas. And then when you come up the west side of Fort Mountain, there were some spots in there that were really narrow, really tight, with looks to the west towards Chatsworth, high elevation. If you were to fall, you probably could get hurt. However, it still doesn't
make me want to call it a backcountry trail. So at one point, even around lunch, I was thinking like, okay, what could be their reason for wanting to consider this a backcountry trail? And so then I got to thinking like, okay, Fort Mountain up here, the park is 17 miles from LJ, 8 miles from Chatsworth. I don't think they have on-site EMT or SAR teams here, so if a person was to fall and break their ankle or get hurt or bit by a snake or attacked by a bear, then they would have to call either LJ or Chatsworth. Chatsworth is closer, so they would probably get here first, but LJ is bigger, so they're probably going to bring a bigger force with them. So, you know, from the time that an emergency starts, the response time is probably going to be severely delayed because the park is, you know, 20 miles, give or take, from the nearest big rescue force. And then, you know, once they got here, they would have to send rangers in to find you, and it could be a real mess. And so that's why even on the map here, down here at the bottom, it says, search and rescue calls can be charged to parties guilty of negligence or failure to get user permits. So essentially, if you were to come on the trail and camp without getting your permit for overnight camping, and then you needed SAR to come out and rescue you, you know, you can be charged for the helicopter ride, you can be charged for the horses they deploy, you can be charged for any of the supplies they use. It's not the hardest trail I've ever hiked. I have hiked harder trails, and I have hiked trails that were nowhere near as hard. The first half of the trail, so the east loop down to the lake, I would say is probably beginner friendly. Once you get on the southwest side and you start heading up the west side to come back up the northwest side back to here to complete the loop, you start getting into more advanced hiking. Not expert hiking, but definitely I would recommend at least being an intermediate hiker, at least have had some hiking under your belt before. Now, as far as how the trail stacks up about being one of the toughest trails in the state, traditionally I do a rating on every trail I hike. Just as since I started the YouTube channel, I've done it, and so I'll do that now for this trail, but I'm not gonna compare it to other trails I've hiked other than what I've already said, which was I've hiked harder and I've hiked less hard. So I'm gonna give the trail a 7. It's probably one of the lower ranking ratings that I've gave a trail. A lot of that comes because of designated a backcountry trail when I don't really think it is a backcountry trail. B, having to get permits to do any kind of camping overnight. Not that it's a huge deal, but I don't think it's necessary. And then the third fact would be that you know, just the hiking in general. I mean, the first 4 miles of the trail was really easy hiking. I was impressed with the campsites. They had all of them but one, which was number 4, not far from here down the mountain to the west. Had bear boxes, big, large, almost like job site toolboxes with locks. So you could actually put your food in there and lock it to keep the bears from getting in it, and then that way you don't have to worry with tossing a rope into the tree, hanging your food. And I will say that if you're interested in coming and hiking the trail, make sure that you carry enough water. So I carried 1 bottle today when I started, full of water, and I finished it at the halfway mark when I stopped for lunch, and then I didn't get water again for like the
next 2.5 to 3 miles, and a lot of it was elevation gain. So I was sweating, I was starting to get cotton mouth. It wasn't a survival situation by any means, but it would have been nice to have a fresh water source, which I finally did find. I stopped, downed a couple bottles of water, and then filtered this bottle to bring back with me. So the final thing I'll do is I'll read you the stats of the trail. I took a picture of my watch when I saved the walk, and so I started my watch right here in this exact spot when we started the trail earlier this morning, and I stopped it right over there by my car a while ago. And so according to the Garmin, it was 8.81 miles of total hike. Now take away probably 0.1 or 0.2 of those miles for when I got on the Campers Loop Trail. It wasn't very long, it was short, but still, so at least 8.5 continual miles of the Gahuti Trail itself. A total time of 6 hours and 28 minutes. Now, I did take an hour lunch where the watch continued to run. I didn't want to turn it off because I thought I might forget to turn it back on. So there's 1 full hour, and then I took a 20-minute break to filter water and rehydrate where the watch stayed running, and then I would give or take 10 to 15 minutes for stopping and taking pictures for my story. So you're looking at an hour and a half of non-hiking time. So 6.5 hours, make that 5 hours with a average pace of 1.4 miles per hour with a 23 pound pack on, with a total elevation gain of 2,435 feet. So the elevation gain's not too shabby. Basically, when you bottom out at the lake, it's continual climbing back up the west side of Fort Mountain. It's not hard, but it is continual climbing. I never stopped for extended periods of time to catch my breath or anything like that, but it is just a gradual ridge climb all the way up from the lake, which I mentioned earlier in the video that it probably would be. So with all that being said, I have nothing else to add other than I can't give this trail a solid rating until I get a few more of the trails that I have on my list of Georgia's hardest before I rank where this trail might land. But I have a feeling that it's probably gonna be at the very bottom of the list as far as hardest. It's probably gonna be considered one of the least hardest of the list, but only time will tell. So thank you guys for following along. I hope you got some useful information out of this. If you've hiked the trail before, give me some input. If you haven't hiked the trail and you need some questions answered, hit me up. I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Aside from that, I will catch you guys on the next one.